Okay, what's up guys, and welcome back to another video. Thank you guys for joining me today. In this video, I'm gonna go over some baits and really what I think is the best baits to go chase giant fish in the wintertime, specifically using forward-facing sonar. And I'll even say, consider this for the southern central part of the country, really from Oklahoma to Alabama in that southern half, because that's the places I've experienced. So that's places I'm most comfortable talking about, although I do think these techniques really will transfer across the country, but this is going to be for mainly largemouth. I'm sure it works on spotted bass, works on smallmouth, but this is where I'm educated, is in the trophy largemouth thing. That's what I'm really concerned with chasing. So I want to show you the baits and kind of what I'm fishing, the different types of baits I'm fishing, and maybe even a little bit of where I'm fishing them as we get into the end. But it's really going to be a very cut and dry short video. I just want to show you guys what I'm using to go chase these big fish. Like the one I caught last weekend. I caught one just over 10 last weekend, and the bait I caught that fish on will be included in this video. Actually, the exact bait I caught it on. So let's dive right in. Just make it short and sweet. I'll dive in, do tackle, and I'll do the gear that I'm throwing it on as well. Hopefully, yeah, I can get to it back there. But just kind of dive in, talk about everything I use, get specific with it a little bit, and just give you guys the tools to go out and try to learn how to chase big fish yourself. Now that depends on what part of the country you're in, right? That's obviously gonna make some things up for you, but here in Oklahoma, I'm gonna say this is what I would use if I want to go specifically chase big fish over the 6, 7, 8 pound range, right? That would be a big one here, all the way up as high as you want to go, right? Just going and chasing after trophy fish. So we have to start out with the number one bait on the list. And by the way, all this is going to be linked down below. So any of these baits you want to go and check out, I'll have links directly to them, or at least to the sites that they're on. But first and foremost, umbrella rig, right? Everyone knows about the umbrella rig and forward-facing sonar in the wintertime. It's just a bait that catches them. There's a few things you can do and ways to set up your bait that are going to make you a little more efficient in the way you fish and how many fish you can put in the boat, especially when we're talking about those big fish, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 pound plus fish. Having the right gear is very important in that situation. So I'm going to tell you guys exactly what I throw. I normally throw a couple of different types of rigs in the wintertime, depending on the depth range I'm fishing, right? So like this one right now specifically, just a 6 cents umbrella rig, and I'm throwing all 3.8 inch swimmers on it, just 3.8 inch, something natural shad colored, right? Just something, it's got that shad minnow look, nothing crazy. You don't need to get nuts with colors. It really doesn't matter that much, I promise. Make all the deals you want about different colors and what's working best, but for the most part, you just need a couple of colors to get you going. So on this rig specifically, like I said, I'm throwing all 1/8 ounce heads. Now, these are Divine swim bait heads, and what makes these baits, or these hooks special specifically, is they've got a really stout hook in them for putting a small bait on it, right? This is a 3.8 inch bait, and I still can put a thick hook on that bait. That way, when I do hook a big fish, I can winch it into the boat. I'm fishing around timber, brush piles, sometimes in open water, but once I hook those big ones, I want to be the one in control. So throwing those bigger, thicker hooks on those swimmers is going to be the best deal. And like I said, I throw a 3.8 99% of the time. I'm always experimenting, thinking about throwing smaller rigs, bigger rigs, but for the most part, this is a really good place to start. That 3.2 to 3.8 range is where you need to be. And all 1/8 ounce heads, if I didn't mention that already, that's for the depth that I fish the most. So that's going to be when I'm fishing from 10 to 20 foot. That's going to be the size I throw. If I go past 20, I will throw this exact same rig, except I'm going to put 2 1/4 ounce weight on the bottom, 2 1/4 ounce heads on the bottom, and that's just to let me control that bait at the right speed down in that 20 to 30 foot range. You could probably even go a little heavier than that if you wanted to, but that's my preferred speed. So, and I keep those 2 rigs tied on all the time and on the deck when I'm going out and throwing an Alabama rig. Just always tied on, because you never know which one you're going to need, especially if you're chasing open water fish. One fish may be down 10 foot, the next one may be down 30. So you got to be prepared when you're out there. That's what I call taking advantage of the opportunities you get while you're on the water. So you see these big fish and you want to be prepared when it happens, have the right bait on. I know everyone doesn't have enough gear to do this, but if you can afford it, it will help you a lot to have both tied on. That way you're not scrambling when that big one shows up, and you give it the right presentation the first time. And this rod, I'm throwing this on just a 7-to-1 reel, 20 to 25 pound test line is going to be your best bet when you're dealing with big fish specifically. I don't like to throw braid, just not a fan. I'm not worried about the fish seeing it. It's loud, it doesn't have any stretch. I'm not a fan. I used to throw it a bunch and I went to straight fluorocarbon. And I'm throwing this on a 7-9 extra heavy rod. This is a rod I didn't think I was going to like when I got it. I thought it was going to be a little overbearing, to be honest. Now I've got a chance to catch a couple of fish on it, and I'm really enjoying it. When you're fishing for these big fish, you want to throw a big rod and you want to have the leverage. Like I said, the big hooks, the big line, and a big rod. You want to have the leverage on these big wintertime fish, because when you hook into a fish of a lifetime, you want to be prepared when it happens, and you never know when it's going to happen, so always be prepared. Really important. And that doesn't matter if I'm throwing the 1/8 ounce swimmers or if I'm throwing the 8s and the quarters. I still want to throw that same big heavy rod. It may feel like a little bit of overkill, to be honest, when you're throwing it, but when you start hooking into these big fish and you need to lean into them, you will understand why I do it. And this is going to be a bait now that I primarily throw when I'm chasing open water fish that are pelagic, cruising around, on open water flats, points, channel bends, things like that, or even fish that are hugging tight to bottom but aren't around wood and brush piles and things like that. That bait gets it done, and it will catch giants. As you guys all know, you've been seeing what's going on in all the states since LiveScope came out, right? Giants are getting caught on umbrella rigs and forward-facing sonar. It's just a bait that has always been good, and it got even better once that forward-facing sonar technology came out. Now, let's dive into the next one. I'm going to pull out this bait specifically. You can tell I'm not prepared here whatsoever. Set up the camera film. How I got to operate. But this is the exact same setup I caught a 1063 on last weekend. Sorry, that noise is obnoxious. But this exact bait caught a 1063 last weekend. And what else would I throw other than a jerk bait? I love throwing a jerk bait in the wintertime. It's actually my favorite. I like it more than the Alabama rig or the umbrella rig, but that is just because of the lakes I fish primarily. I think I fish a lot of lakes that have standing timber or they're shallower. So with the umbrella rig, I don't need to get that deep, and I can throw a jerk bait at these fish that are, sub 15 foot, get a bait to them, get them interested, and then I get to make them react with that bait. I get to play cat and mouse, right? I'll watch these fish chase, and I get to force them to eat. With the umbrella rig, you kind of have to hope that they want to eat. There are a few ways you can make them react, but nothing like you can do with a jerkbait playing with them. And this specific jerkbait that I caught that giant on is a 6th Sense 106 or Provoke 106 DD, and it's in a ghost bone color. Now I do throw a couple of different colors. Generally, 99% of the time, I want to keep it natural. I'm gonna throw that ghost bone, something that looks shad-like or whatever the bait fish is that's in your fishery, right? But every once in a while, where'd you go? I'll switch over, throw something a little bit different, a little bit brighter. I can't tell you why it works sometimes, but sometimes they will just eat it. Generally, it's going to be later into the spring as we start transitioning to that warmer water. It's pushing up towards 50 degrees, 55 degrees even. But in the wintertime, it works just as well. And I wish I could tell you what this color is, and I will think of it here in a second. Wabi Sabi is the name of the color, and I'll put a little screenshot up on the screen probably here for you guys. But if not, you can see it right there. It's just a purple back shad pattern, but it's got the chartreuse in purple. So it's a little bit brighter presentation. It's still not in your face bright, but it's a little bit different than what I normally throw. And that's a popular color, don't get me wrong, but this bait will get bit at the right time. The important part with the jerk bait is, as much as I would love to tell you there is a one-size-fits-all jerk bait, there flat out is not. You're gonna need a bunch of jerk baits. This gets expensive really quick. I mean, I have hundreds of dollars of jerk baits in my boat, and it's not because I like to tinker and have a lot of different ones. It's because each one has a place. Each one does a specific thing really well, and you need to be throwing it at the right time. So it's not uncommon for me to have 2 or 3 jerkbait rods rigged up at one time. just so I'm prepared when those fish show up. Like for example, the 106 DD, this is a bait that gets down really well, probably 6, maybe down to 8 or 9 feet, right? And that's awesome. That's the depth range I fish at the most. Most of my fish are sitting down between 5 and 12 feet where I live right now. So that bait gets the job done. I can throw it out, calculate kind of where I need to be and how deep I need to get it, and get it on that fish. But there are other times where that is not the right bait to be throwing, and you need to be prepared. So what I like to have, I'll kind of break it down into a few categories, I guess. Your shallow diving baits, right? The 2 to 4 foot diving baits, like just a regular Provoke 106. Or there's a bunch of different baits, right? Everyone makes one. Pick your favorite, what you're the most confident in. So back to breaking it down. Get a little bit of ADHD going right now. Those baits that go 2 to 4 feet. So I use that when those fish are up really high in the water column. It doesn't happen that often in the wintertime. Usually that's another thing that happens later, more towards spring, is we're getting a trending upwards, or a upwards trend in water temperature. And that bait will kill them when it happens. And it's a very specific time and place, but when it happens, you need to have one tied on. Then, like I said, you get into those the 6 to 8 foot diving baits that are going to cover those fish from 5 to 12 foot. Usually you can kind of get those fish's attention. Now there's one that I don't hear talked about as much. That's going to be your baits that dive 10 foot plus. Any baits that you can get down 12 to 15 feet, there's not many of them, and most of the baits that people do make do not work very good, but there's a handful of baits. Like I said, pick your favorite. Whichever one you like the most is the one that's probably going to work best for you. But get one of those baits that gets down to that 10 to 15 foot range, where you can target those fish that are on bottom, that are in deep brush piles, that are just cruising deeper in open water than normal. And that's about as far as I go. Not a lot of colors. I try to keep it fairly natural most of the winter months, like I said, until it gets to that warming trend. Then I start switching over to some of those brighter colors as well. Not that the shad colors don't work, but there's something that happens, at least in my area of the country, where those fish go nuts. And they will just eat the brightest, most obnoxious colors. I've caught them on, the bright pearls, reds, chartreuse colored baits. Like, it's odd, but in the wintertime, I stick to that normal kind of shad pattern bait, and that's what I do the best on. Now, this rod, I have one jerkbait rod at this point that I throw. What's the word for it? One type of jerkbait rod, I guess. I don't throw a bunch of different models. That's what I'm looking for. I throw one, and that's going to be, this is a 6-inch rod. I'm not trying to sell you guys on this, I promise. This is just a rod I got, had hopes for, and then fell in love with this rod. This is a ESP by 6 cents, and it's a 610 medium fast. Now this rod is probably just a touch heavier than what you would normally throw on a jerkbait rod. And the reason I do this is because we're talking about chasing big fish, right? I fish a lot of places with standing timber and stuff for those fish to get hung in. It happens to me every time I go out and fish in the timber, right? Brush piles, timber, things like that make me lose big fish if I don't have the right setup, and it will for you too. So, just a touch heavier than normal. 610 medium fast, and that rod gives me the leverage, I guess, to move those fish when I have to. Obviously, you're out there, you're not throwing the biggest gear, it's smaller hooks, it's 12-pound line, but there comes a point in time where you've hooked in an 8-pounder on LiveScope, and it's swimming towards a piece of timber, right? You're watching that swim over, and you have two choices. You let that fish wrap you up in the tree, or you winch on that fish as hard as you can without breaking line and hope that you can turn it away. And if you don't have a heavy enough rod, it's just not gonna work. You just can't turn them. I learned the hard way too many times. I've experimented with different rods, lines, throwing braid to leader, just different stuff to get these fish to connect. And the system I've got to now is pretty much where I started. 12-pound fluoro, 610 medium fast. You could even go up to 7 foot, 7'2", depending on the rod you have, but I do like something shorter. Just seems to help me play those fish better and work my bait better by the boat. And that's my system to catch big ones. That's the setup that I feel is the best. The only thing I would say is most jerk baits, god dang it, I'm hung up. Most jerk baits come with tiny hooks, right? It's a finesse presentation, always has been. Well, now that we're getting to target these fish in places with baits that shouldn't be fish there, I guess. Throwing these jerkbaits around wood and pole timber and big trees, it doesn't have to be a finesse presentation anymore because we can make the right cast in that stuff with forward-facing sonar. So, that being said, I love the hooks on this 6th Sense 106. They're good straight out of the package, and I do not change them out of the package, flat out. But when, and you will, when you start straightening out hooks on these big fish, I do have a hook that I like to go to on all my baits. Almost every bait it works perfect. That still allows me to have a meatier hook on that bait and still have leverage on those fish, right? I don't want those finesse hooks. I broke them. I have had a ton of baits where I left stock hooks on and lost big fish just due to bent out and broke hooks. All there is to it. So what I put on there is a Gamakatsu Nano treble. I use them in a couple different sizes depending on the bait, but most of the stuff you can get done with a number 3 and a number 4. And that's going to depend on the bait. But those two sizes I keep in the boat at all times, and I put them on all my jerk baits. Some baits I can put 3 hooks on still. Some I'm going down to 2 hooks. It just really depends on the bait. But those meatier hooks are a big deal when it comes to getting those big fish in the boat. I promise you want to do this. You don't want to learn the hard way. I cannot tell you how many big fish I've lost just due to not having the right gear. But that was all in experimentation. But now, with this video and many other videos, I'm sure, you got the right gear. We're telling you what to use. We've lost them, caught them, heartbreak, success, and everything in between, right? So I promise you guys all this stuff in here, even though I do work with 6th Sense. These are things that I have on my deck every time I go, and I know the equipment well and I trust it. That's the important part. You have to trust your equipment, and that just takes time. So if you're interested in any of this, like I said, I'll leave it all linked down below, and I'll leave a discount code if you want to go pick something up. But now let's dive into areas that I want to chase these fish. Now, there's a bunch of different ways to do this, and I don't know what necessarily is the right way, and it's going to depend on your lake. But here's what I look for in general. Essentially, you have your deep, clean lakes. You have your not clean, deeper lakes, big flat bowls, things like that, just city lakes, things like that, reservoirs, and then you're gonna have your lakes with timber and brush in them, right? And time again, no matter where I go, it seems like it always comes back to the same thing. Where I catch the biggest fish that I will catch all year, almost every time, no matter where I go, is on flats next to channels. And I almost don't want to tell you guys that because it's that basic. But if you go cover enough water on your lake, you will find some of the biggest fish in the winter on flats next to channels. And if your lake doesn't have channels, it's going to be on flats next to a deeper part of the lake, next to drops, next to ledges, right? And these fish will get on the edges, whether it's on top or on the outside or right on it, and they will cruise and look for bait. If you have standing timber, they may be set up on the timber. If you have brush piles, things like that, they may be on that. And if you're on rock lakes, unfortunately, sometimes they just disappear onto the bottom and live there. But the fish that we're looking for when I go out in LiveScope and I want to chase big ones is the most aggressive fish, which are the fish that are up, pelagic, and looking to feed. Those are the fish you want to chase after. And if you go chase ditches, channel edges, and flats next to channels, that's where they're going to be almost all winter. You just have to find the right section of it. But when you do, that's the incredible part. You put the time in, and when you find that magic stretch, it will stay good pretty consistently all winter. There will be fish on it because these fish move out into their wintering holes and they stay. That being said, they will get smarter with time, but they will be there. So put the time in, go look for these fish, go find them, and then you can go back and repeat fish these areas, and you may catch 20 pounds one day, you may catch 35 the next. It just depends how the fish are acting in that area. But when you can get out and find them pelagic and moving and chasing bait, maybe not actively on bait fish, but they're out roaming, those are the big fish you want to go chase because they're the easiest ones to catch. Not that you can't catch them when they're set up, because you very well can, but the most productive fish, I guess, to go fish after, the most, I don't know what I'm saying. The easiest fish to catch are the fish that are out and being pelagic and roaming. So, fish cover, If there's no cover, flats next to channels. And if you can find cover on flats next to channels, that's the best case scenario. And I don't care if you're in Oklahoma, Texas, go out towards Alabama and all that. I've done it out there as well. It doesn't matter. You can go catch fish doing that. So that being said, I hope this video was helpful. I hope you got some good tips out of this, found some gear that you may have some confidence in. Like I said, all these baits that I'm showing you, I've caught big fish on, I catch them on it, and other people are doing it as well. I mean, you can find tons of videos of people catching big ones on 3.8-inch Divine swim baits. Shoot, like I said, I just caught a 10 on that Provoke 106. I just watched a guy catch a 14 on it the other day. These baits produce big fish. You just have to go learn how to find them, break down your body of water, and then you will catch one of those big fish eventually if you put the time in. But that's all there is to it, is put the time in on the water, go search for the fish. You may, just may, get a chance at a fish of a lifetime. So hope this video helped you guys. Let me know if you have any questions. Leave them down in the comments. I appreciate you guys for tuning in and staying this long with my nonsensical rambling, I guess, but I do hope you enjoyed the video. Like I said, let me know if you have any questions. I'll try to answer all those in the comments or make more videos on them if it's a question that requires me going in depth. So thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.